And from your vantage point, we hear a word called strategy a lot, right? So I'm curious to know uh, how our culture and strategy play from your mindset, or from your vantage point. How do you play? Which one is better or which one is worse, or how and when it's required? I'm curious.
So I would just go back to Peter Drucker, and when he said culture eats strategy for breakfast, I think he said it well, because you need a successful strategy, but you also need a successful culture. If you don't have a successful culture, I will say that regardless, and this is what Peter Drucker would say, regardless of how good your strategy is, you could fail. And so I think it really shows, and it goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. I think as organizations have evolved, and especially in the world that we're in today, the global world we're in today, it's becoming more and more important as far as how culture and character of an organization plays out. I talked about customers before. I could talk about employees. I mean, everyone talks about the war on talent and how every year it seems to get worse rather than better. It's a very competitive world. There's a strong need for talent. The way that you attract talent is to have an organization that has a character and a culture that attracts and retains that talent. If not, they'll go elsewhere. And not only to attract and retain, but as I said before, allow them to do their best work. And when they can be authentic, when they can feel inclusive, when they can be open and collaborative and bring their best selves to their job, to their professional life, you're going to get the best results. And when that all kind of comes together is where success then helps drive the overall strategy execution.
I think that's fascinating, and you talk about last 15 months, and I think that's a interesting time for all of us, right? And most of us are still grappling and trying to coming back. So I'm curious, as a leader of an organization, when you see, say, if we rewind ourselves to say March or February, when we are seeing sort of some writing on the wall, things are acting and reacting, and it's just constantly. The situation is building and we don't know what to do about that. As a leader of an organization, I'm curious to know what's going inside you, of how to keep this ship running and float and motivated as you are chartering in the world of I don't know what's going on.
Vishal, it's a big part of why, if you would ask me this question, like why the book, why now? I can weave that into this question because it's critical. I think as everyone, if you go back to March of last year, everyone was faced with a significant change in a short amount of time. And I don't think anyone knew at that time how best to adjust and deal with it, whether it was leaders or whether it was individuals that were part of the organizations that at that time. We were all thrown into a situation where everything was now remote. And I think there were probably a couple of weeks where there was a learning and an understanding. And to answer your question, throughout, but early, but also throughout the last 15 months, we all learned and developed. And I think the big realization that many of us had is that we are resilient, right? And that you can find different ways of doing things. Success for me, and not to say, and it also was an opportunity for me to listen and learn to other peers, because there was a lot of outreach, especially early on in the first couple of months, like, what are you doing? How are you dealing with that, right? So it allowed for a better connecting point to listen and to learn and share. And so from my standpoint, what I learned early on was a point about empathy. Empathy internal and empathy external. Empathy internal was to listen and understand and appreciate the amount of change and disruption that employees in the organization were going through and what it really meant for them and what were ways of helping them through solutioning some of that change and that challenge. Externally, I think first it's with customers, right, that you work with, partners that you work with, and again, empathy and listening and learning what they were going through. And I think by listening and learning, you were able to find ways, again, of reaching out and helping. I mean, from Anaplan's perspective, we created something called Anaplan Helps during that time, where we made our platform available for 90 days for free, because we felt there was customers were trying to, get their businesses stood up or deal with some societal issue that they were dealing with, and allowing our platform to be able to provide that help was an offer of help. But we learned a lot, and as a result, we developed some great goodwill as part of it. And then the third part is the listening and learning, or showing empathy in the communities that we were part of. I mean, shortly going into it, Black Lives Matter with the George Floyd situation, but various other things then developed throughout the year. Listening and learning what that really meant to the community, what that really meant to members of our company, either actively participating in that or just listening and appreciating some of the dynamics that went around that was also a good learning experience of really kind of expressing empathy. So the first step was empathy. The next step was being somewhat inclusive in bringing others in to help work through some of the solutions and some of the challenges. And I think as a result, organizations, found ways of working through it. We found that it was okay to work at home, to be able to deal with the personal as well as the professional. It was okay to engage with others, remotely through video rather than in person, and things, continued to progress and improve over a period of time. So I think that was kind of the biggest learning experience I developed, and reaching out to other CEOs and hearing and listening to what they were doing and how they were working through that allowed me to then create some more notes and more nuggets and more experiences that I wanted to share in Upstanding.